Installing a K&N cold air intake on a 2014 to 2018 Silverado or Sierra 1500. Estimated difficulty is only a 2 out of 5 in my opinion, and it should only take you about 45 minutes. For this job, you will need a 10mm socket, 8mm socket ratchet with extensions, T10 and T15 Torx with driver, 3mm and 4mm Allen keys, an adjustable wrench, flathead screwdriver, scissors to trim off the excess rubber trim, and gloves if you prefer to keep your hands clean. I also grabbed a right angle cordless impact driver to make things a little faster and easier, but that's certainly not necessary. I use this little magnetic tray to keep things close and organized, and I think it would be silly not to take the opportunity to clean the mass airflow sensor and throttle body while they're exposed, so I've got cleaners for those and a shop towel. I'll provide links to all these products in the description.
A couple things you can go ahead and do while you're still in your house before you get started are put this rubber edge trim on the heat shield and trim off the excess, and then also put the little foam gasket on the mass airflow sensor adapter here that's included, which just goes on like this. There's only one correct way that this thing goes on, so it's pretty impossible to screw this up. Make sure that you get it lined up properly here and press. Now that is good to go. Rubber edge trim for the heat shield. I'm just going to start at this side. Got quite a bit of excess. Take my scissors here. You can also go ahead and attach your fittings to the intake tube. You just want to hand tighten these and then go a little bit past that with your adjustable wrench. You don't want to over tighten these, just make sure they're snug. You can also go ahead and attach the mass airflow sensor adapter that we just put that foam gasket on. It's going to go like this with these threads facing outward. This is what the MAF is going to attach to. I'm going to use 2 of these bolts with some flat washers using your 4mm Allen key. And again, just getting that snug, making sure not to over tighten it. You can also go ahead and attach the filter adapter to the filter before we get out there. You got a hose clamp already on there. You can snug this down with a flathead screwdriver or an 8mm socket. And then tighten this thing down. Again, don't over tighten this, just make sure it's snug. That's our filter. Since I want to do as much as possible here inside before I get out there, I'm also going to go ahead and put these hose coupler adapters on the intake tube. 08418 is going to go on the filter side. You've got another 08418 if you've got the 6.2 liter engine. If you've got the 5.3 liter like me, you want to use 08497 on the end connecting to the throttle body, which is this side where the elbow is here. This is harder than it looks because this intake tube is oiled up, so everything wants to slip around. It was way harder to get this thing on than it should have been. You're going to question yourself on if you picked the right one, but it'll eventually go on there. It took some work though. So hose clamp, slide on here. Okay, that's good and snug. Now for the other side, again, you're going to want the 08418. This one is the same circumference on both sides, so you don't need to worry about which way it goes. This one will slide on there a lot easier. Hose clamp first. Alright, so now when I get out there, my intake tube is already fully assembled.
Now we're out at the truck. First, we're going to unplug the mass airflow sensor by pulling up on the red locking tab and then pulling the connector out, pulling the retainer clip, holding it to the airbox, and tucking that connector out of the way. Then proceeding to remove the factory crankcase hoses from the air plenum by just pressing down on the gray tabs. Remove the bolt for the support bar with a 10mm socket and slide it out of the way. Now removing the MAF sensor using a T10 Torx bit. That's what the MAF looks like. I'm going to clean that while it's off the vehicle. I'll have another separate video on that. Now just loosening the hose clamp holding the air plenum to the throttle body with an 8mm socket, as well as the hose clamp to the airbox to separate the two pieces to avoid interfering with the coolant lines when this comes out. Slide the air plenum off the throttle body to remove. Take this opportunity to inspect your serpentine belt for any cracks and clean the throttle body. This airbox just has grommets holding it in place, so you just need to pull up and the entire box comes out. Use a 10mm socket with extension to remove the 4 factory bolts holding this tray on, and then remove the tray. It's a pretty tight fit to shimmy this heat shield in, and then use 3 of those factory bolts you just removed to secure it down. Now take 2 large bolts from the K&N hardware with 2 lock washers and 2 flat washers and 4mm Allen key to secure the filter to the heat shield. Reconnect the support bar. Install the MAF sensor to the new intake tube using the new small bolts in the provided hardware pack with a 3mm Allen key. Make sure the opening in the MAF is facing the air filter. At this point I realized I had forgotten to completely remove those factory crankcase hoses. Slide hose clamps onto the couplers and install the intake tube. Tighten the hose clamps with an 8mm socket. Give it a few good shakes to make sure everything is secure. Plug in the MAF sensor connector and push down the red locking tab. Lastly, install the new provided crankcase hoses. And you're done. K&N claim a horsepower boost of around 10. I've noticed slightly better fuel economy, snappier throttle response, and more of a growl from the exhaust. Click here to watch the separate video of the before and after sound clips.